Hey guys, it's DrSamRobbins. Today's topic is about 20 signs that you have low testosterone. And I mentioned this because someone sent me an email and said, hey, what do you think about this video? And the topic was 20 signs you have low testosterone or low T. Is it true? You know, some of this stuff doesn't make sense to me. And I was going to do one of these reaction videos. And I thought if I do the reaction plus me talking, it's going to drag out. So let me just quickly go over what was mentioned in the video, get to right to the point for you, save you time so you don't have to deal with it. So the first thing they said is that you have low testosterone. One sign is difficulty sleeping. Now, it's true that if you have low testosterone, you have difficulty sleeping, but generally speaking, if you have low testosterone, you're more fatigued. So you actually end up like sleeping more and you're tired throughout the day. Your sleep might not be as optimal, but you actually sleeping more. Now, the problem might be the other way around, is that the lack of sleep or good sleep is what can definitely cause lower testosterone levels. Why? Because sleep fixes everything. It optimizes the hormones. Also, when you don't sleep as much, your cortisol, stress hormones go up, and the opposite hormone of testosterone is not estrogen, but cortisol, the stress hormone. As cortisol goes up, testosterone comes down. So keep that in mind. Sleep is a big issue. So it's not necessarily that testosterone, low testosterone is going to cause lack of sleep. It's a lack of sleep might cause low testosterone. Now, another big factor of low testosterone is obviously lack of muscle. You know, the thing is, as you get older, you're going to lose muscle, right? Now, if you're not going to be exercising and all that, but if you exercise at a young age and so forth, and you keep exercising, actually, even when you're older, if you exercise, you will gain muscle, even when your testosterone levels aren't optimal, right? So keep that in mind. Obviously, you know, you're not going to necessarily be as strong. One thing that does decrease as you age is strength. And that's just because the fluids in your joints and the ligaments and tendons and so forth, your neurotransmitters aren't as good. You're actually not also as smart as when you were younger, but you can definitely gain muscle mass. But when it's a lot harder to gain muscle mass as you get older, and if your testosterone levels are optimal, you're just going to kind of plateau and slowly lose muscle, even though you're working out. So keep that in mind. It's you're going to lose it, but it's going to be a lot more prevalent when your testosterone levels are low. Now, another factor or problem with low testosterone is just being tired, being fatigued. You know, remember when you were younger and you just like in your 20s, you didn't need much sleep? Testosterone is a big factor for that. Now, some people would say, hey, what about growth hormone? Growth hormone in your teenage years actually causes you to sleep like 8, 9, 10 hours. But it's your 20s when growth hormone levels drop back down because they peak in your late teens and 20s, but it's the testosterone that keeps you going, right? So if you're low testosterone levels, typically you might also have higher estrogen levels, which I'll get to in a minute. So that low testosterone plus higher other hormones will just cause you to just be generally fatigued. And that's why I meant sometimes you end up sleeping more, or you want to take another nap or two in the middle of the day. Very different than when you're go when you're younger and you have optimal testosterone levels. Now, another factor that was mentioned was mood changes. Now, when your testosterone is higher, you're a lot more driven, all right? But when your testosterone becomes lower, and sometimes what happens is that the estrogen, even though if estrogen might come lower or higher, it's the estrogen, you become a little bit more estrogen dominant. So that makes you a little bit more moody, you know how estrogen is, maybe a little bit more depressed, more apathetic about life. You're not as driven. So keeping in mind that when testosterone levels are higher, you're a lot more driven. You're also because your dopamine levels are higher. So you're just more driven to get to the next goal, get to the next level. But when your testosterone is low, your hormones aren't as good, plus all the other things I mentioned, lack of sleep and so forth, you're going to be moody. You're not going to be as happy. Sometimes it manifests itself in anger or sometimes in sadness. So keep that in mind. That's why, you know, older men tend to be a lot more jolly at times or more loving, also because they're more estrogenic. So keep that in mind. You're just a little bit more moody. Now, that video also said that low testosterone is linked to hair loss. Not so much. So what happens is that actually when you hit puberty and testosterone levels go up, the hair shaft gets thicker. So it makes things, you know, when you're younger, your hair is like silky, and then you hit puberty, the hair, it doesn't, the density, that you don't have more hair follicles, just the density of the hair, the size of the hair gets bigger. But what happens is that maybe your levels of low testosterone, the video said, hey, they're going to lose, it's linked to hair loss. It's not necessarily that. It's low testosterone levels. I mean, if you had low hormones, you have a lot more hair. It's the fact that testosterone levels drop, and usually it's because it's converting more to two other hormones, DHT, dihydrotestosterone, and estrogen. So the combination of those two can accelerate hair loss. So keep that in mind. A lot of times someone will, for example, go on TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, and the minute they add testosterone, because they didn't manage the estrogen and the DHT, they feel a little bit better, but they accelerate hair loss a lot worse. I know a lot of guys who go on TRT and immediately they're like, oh my God, I'm losing so much more hair. Obviously, if it's not in your genetics, you're probably not going to lose hair. But the minute you go on TRT, if you're not managing both estrogen and DHT, which most people aren't, that's going to be a problem. So it's not so much the low testosterone, it's what testosterone's converting. So testosterone comes down, DHT and estrogen go up. So that ends up causing the bigger hair loss problems. And I'll do a whole video about TRT if you guys want. Just let me know all your questions below, because I know this is a big, important topic about people increasing testosterone, all the side effects they get from it. Now, another mention was erectile dysfunction. That's a given for sure. It's not 100% related to testosterone. It's testosterone and blood flow are two main things, and sometimes psychological things, of course. When you're younger, things are new sexually, and you get excited about everything. As you get older, it's not. So sometimes it's not as intriguing as it used to be. So keeping that in mind, lower testosterone definitely causes erectile problems, lack of nitric oxide, lack of blood flow. Those are compounding factors. Also, when testosterone's low, dopamine tends to be lower. So again, dopamine's another cause for drive, for sex drive, and better sexual performance. So yes, definitely, obviously, as everyone knows, erectile dysfunction is one cause. It's not 100% testosterone, but it's definitely one major cause of low T. Now, that video also said reduced semen volume, ejaculatory volume. Yes, it's somewhat true, because when your testosterone levels are low, that could be because your testicles aren't producing enough testosterone. 90% of your testosterone is made in the testicles. Another 10% is made through pituitary and so forth, hypothalamus going over there. But it's for your adrenal glands. So it's more the adrenal glands only produce 10%, but the hypothalamus, pituitary tell your testicles to produce more testosterone, about 90% of it. So if it's not working as well, if your testicles aren't working as well, yes, semen volume will be a little bit lower, but here's the deal. How are you going to do that? How are you going to know if you have lower semen volume? It's not like you kept track of it and said, well, when I was in my 20s, I had an ounce, and now in my 40s, I only have half an ounce, or, it's so minimal, the difference, that you're never going to know. So yes, it's true that it's one of those factors, but you're not going to be able to observe it or know the difference. So I would leave that out as a symptom or a sign. Another mention in that video was hot flashes. Men typically don't get hot flashes, definitely not from low testosterone. In fact, typically higher testosterone levels would make us warmer, and that's one reason men tend to be warmer in bed, while the girl's got all her blankets and all that stuff on her, and you're like sweating in the middle of the night. So hot flashes is a rare thing, and that a lot of times not has to do as much with low testosterone as much as it has to do with the estrogen imbalance. Now, the video also mentioned bone loss, and that's definitely true. Testosterone, lower testosterone does cause bone density loss and more fragility to the bones. But again, how are you going to know? I won't know if my bone density is unless you do a full DEXA scan or something. But again, it's not one of those things you can actually tell, like, hey, I got like less, bone density. One of the best things to increase bone density is just lifting weights. Make sure you have enough protein, but lifting weights will definitely fix it, irregardless of what your testosterone levels are. So keep that in mind. So testosterone, I would suggest, of course, it's going to cause bone density issues, but it's not really one of those factors that you're going to be able to tell on your own. Now, another thing mentioned in the video was testicular shrinkage. That means when your testicles, your balls shrink. Yes, that can be, again, a sign, but just like the seminal volume decreasing, it's not like you're measuring your testicles or you're weighing them and say, hey, you know what? Now they weigh less, so therefore the size is less. So it's not something you'll ever really notice that, hey, they've shrunk. And whatever it is, it's so gradual that you're never going to actually see or feel. Now, the people who do see and feel dramatic testicular shrinkage is anyone who starts to take steroids, or and that includes, again, testosterone injections. Why? Because when you're putting something exogenously from the outside into your body, such as testosterone, which is a steroid, or any other form of steroid, it tells your testicles to not produce any. It's like, hey, I don't need to produce any. I got all this extra stuff coming. So what happens over time, your testicles start to shrink. Sometimes it gets so bad that it shrinks and goes up into your lower abdomen. Now, I've had guys tell me that it either turns into a tiny raisin for some guys or actually goes in the abdomen. Some people just get smaller and they're still hanging fine, like steroid users. But some people shrinks tiny amount, tiny little raisins. Or sometimes, like I said, it goes inside the abdomen, which is crazy. I had a friend tell me, he's like, it's not even there, bro. And he was a big time steroid user. By the way, this happens with TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. So what they do is they combat that by giving you HCG, and there's a whole big thing. And then with HCG, that converts more to estrogen, and now they have to manage estrogen levels. And of course, higher testosterone might lead to higher DHT levels, which causes hair loss and prostate, blah, 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 blah. As you can see, it gets complicated. And this is why most doctors, TRT clinics, hormone replacement therapy clinics do it all wrong. And one reason is because they can make so much more money off of you prescribing you 5 or 6 different drugs and saying, hey, you need all this stuff. And then they do all the blood tests every few weeks or months, and it gets complicated. Improve your testosterone levels as much as you can naturally, which is what I talk about, which is why I created a supplement for myself years ago called Alpha Virile. Again, it helps boost the testosterone levels, and it manages the other hormones that I mentioned, such as estrogen and DHT and cortisol levels, which I'll get to in a minute. Again, the product works, results in 30 days. You get a full money-back guarantee. Plus, I give you an additional $100. Again, it comes with 25 years of research. That's why I can make a guarantee. Alpha Virile link will be below this video in the description area. But let's continue. Another factor of low testosterone is obviously low sex drive. Again, erectile dysfunction is one thing, but just your desire to have sex. What happens is some people have the desire, but then they can't perform. And some people just can't really perform, nor do they have the desire. Now, desire can be psychological, again, like I mentioned earlier. If you're always, same person, you've been married for 30 years, maybe you don't have that desire, but sometimes you don't have the desire even by yourself. So that desire, and again, that's also linked to dopamine, and testosterone increases dopamine levels and so forth. So that's another factor, again, obvious to most guys, but sex drive, the desire for it is another symptom of having low testosterone. Now, another factor is depression. I told, my friend when he did all these different experiments and all these things, and he took testosterone therapy for years. Then he says, I don't want to deal with it. And he got off of it. And then for years, he just couldn't get his testosterone back. And he had to just go on testosterone permanently. But he said one thing right away. He's like, oh man, me not having any testosterone, the minute I injected it and got my testosterone levels up to normal after a few years, because again, he had broken his system, so he had to be on it forever. But he's like, it's the world's greatest antidepressant. So improving testosterone levels while at the same time not having high estrogen will definitely improve your mood. But having low testosterone and then higher estrogen or more estrogen dominance, dude, you're going to feel like a chick who's menstruating. You're going to be depressed. You're going to have anxiousness, frustration. You're going to have all these negative feelings. So it's not just the low testosterone. It's also, again, higher estrogen levels. So keep that in mind. That's why, again, Alpha Virile, I dealt with all these hormones because my background being in endocrinology and hormones, you need to balance it all out. It's not just increasing testosterone. It's also increasing total and free testosterone levels, balancing all these other hormones. So it's youthful levels, not when you're older. Now, another symptom that video mentioned about low testosterone is poor memory. Yes, testosterone, definitely low testosterone does cause memory loss. But the problem is when you get older, we all have memory problems. My testosterone level is super high. And trust me, I do not have the same good memory as I used to when I was younger. So it is a symptom. But remember also lack of sleep, which can cause low testosterone and so forth. Again, that lack of sleep is a huge factor of memory problems. So keep that in mind. Again, I have a whole video series about improving memory, but low testosterone is linked to it. But again, I would definitely not put that as the main category, something you should focus on, because there's a lot of other factors that will cause memory problems, especially as we get older. Another factor the video mentioned with low testosterone is enlarged breasts or man boobs, gynecomastia. You've probably seen it. That definitely low testosterone is an issue, but it's not so much that it's low testosterone. It's the higher estrogen, or more so imbalance. What happens is when let's say your testosterone used to be here, right? Testosterone is way higher, estrogen is way lower, right? As it should be, right? Still normal ranges, but higher and lower. Over time, it goes like this, right? So your testosterone starts to drop while your estrogen levels go up. And at one point, maybe they're like similar balanced, or maybe they're both low, but the estrogen is a lot getting closer to the testosterone. So you become a little bit, quote unquote, more estrogen dominant. So immediately you start getting man boobs or gynecomastia. Keep something in mind. If you don't manage these hormones, the estrogen also, and so forth, when you do take testosterone replacement therapy with an injection, you can get gynecomastia right away, because that's an instant increase in estrogen conversion, especially as you get older. The fatter you are, the more aromatase enzyme, the more estrogen you're going to convert. The older you get, the more estrogen you're going to convert, genetics and so forth. So estrogen is a big deal. So you want to lower estrogen levels as you get older, while that immediately will increase testosterone. In fact, as your estrogen goes up, testosterone comes down. Estrogen goes down, testosterone goes higher. So it's a balancing act. Again, that's why I created so many different specific herbs in Alpha Viral to help balance all these things. So keep that in mind. Gynecomastia, the first thing I would tell you is definitely lose fat. Okay, balancing your testosterone, all that stuff is great, but losing fat is even more important. So keep that in mind. Now, another factor in that video was anemia, and anemia basically lower, blood volume because of low testosterone. When guys who take testosterone, or you do blood doping and Tour de France and all that stuff, your hematocrit, hemoglobin, all that stuff levels go up. But typically this isn't something men deal with. It's more women, because of menstrual once a month, they're bleeding and so forth. And if you're having red meat, typically anemia isn't an issue. But again, it could be, but it's not one of those. Trust me, you're going to have all these other issues that I mentioned earlier, far more prevalent being anemic. Now, another factor the video mentioned with low testosterone is low sperm count. It's true. When FSH, LH isn't working, your testicles aren't producing. It's also not producing sperm either. I've got a ton of videos about improving sperm count and all that. But again, how are you going to know this? Unless you can't measure your sperm or sperm volume at home. It's not going to be like, oh, I was like 5 tablespoons once and now I'm only half a tablespoon. It's never going to be like that. So you can't really measure it, and you'd have to go get it done properly, do a sperm count, motility, and all that stuff. You're never going to do this. So yes, it's true, but it's not something you can ever know at home, that if there's a sign that, hey, I think I got low sperm volume. I only counted like 20 million. Last time I counted like 100 million. So it's not something you can look for. So disregard that. Anxiety is an issue with low testosterone, but again, more so, as I mentioned, just like depression, it's the higher estrogen levels, or the more estrogen dominance. So anxiety, and also when testosterone is lower, you have less dopamine, so that can cause anxiety. So these mood changes are definitely not so much low testosterone related, it's more hormonal imbalance related. Keep something in mind, as testosterone levels go up, cortisol levels tend to go up. So you tend to get a little bit more anxious that way as well. Another mention is low strength. Definitely low muscle and low strength, low testosterone, all those things are related to each other. But again, I'm definitely weaker now than I was 30 years ago when I was younger, and I have more muscle mass now than when I was younger in my 20s, obviously, when I was, and over time I've had a lot more time to build muscle, but I'm definitely weaker. Why? Joint mobility and all that stuff. So strength is going to drop no matter what as you get older. So keep that in mind. It's not necessarily testosterone related, it's just age related. I would say muscle loss is probably a little bit bigger factor than strength loss. But again, both are related. And finally, the video mentioned lack of concentration when you have low testosterone. And yeah, that's valid. Again, when you have low testosterone, you are more driven. So one thing the video didn't mention is the lack of drive. When you have higher testosterone levels, because of dopamine and all that stuff, you're more driven. You're not as apathetic. You want to conquer. You want to get up and do something early, and you want to chase the girl and go for money and do all this stuff. As you get older, you become more complacent. Yes, life has all those issues. I've definitely become more complacent as I've gotten older because I'm not as excited as I used to be about things. I'm like, oh, been there, done that. So the novelty's worn off. And even though trust me, my dopamine's high, my testosterone's high, there's emotional reasons. But concentration weans off. You get brain fog. Again, it's not so much just low testosterone, it's hormonal imbalance. Lower test, lower or higher estrogen, higher cortisol levels, lack of dopamine, serotonin imbalance, all those things. So it's got a little bit complicated. Again, I've got a ton of videos about improving all these things that I mentioned with testosterone. I'll put the link below. And again, if you want to improve your testosterone levels naturally before you do TRT, I suggest you do all the things that I mentioned with a diet and exercise and all that stuff in all my videos, and take a supplement that deals with all these hormonal imbalances. You don't want just increased testosterone. You want total and free testosterone, balancing estrogen, and prolactin levels is one that I haven't mentioned today, DHT levels, cortisol levels, and all that stuff. So it's just a balancing act. When you're younger, it's all nicely balanced. When you get older, things just seem to be always a big mess. So I hope this was helpful. Lots of important links below this video. If you found this helpful, please subscribe. I know a lot of you just watch the videos and maybe not subscribe. Don't know why. Let me know questions you have below and any future comments and questions. Thanks. Thanks for watching. Wishing you a very happy and healthy day.